Hello everyone and welcome to the ROKER Report Extra Pod. It's Gav back once again. Yeah, you're probably wondering what have you done to deserve this. I'm sorry, you're going to hear a lot of me this week. I'm joined by Jimmy Lawson, Mr. Player Ratings, on the other side of the screen to us right now. How are you doing, Jimmy?
Yeah, good. Yourself?
Fabulous, yeah. Well, say fabulous. We're about to talk about Sunderland. Jimmy Mood's going to plunge even further. Talking about going further and down under. It's Martin in Australia.
G'day, mate.
How are you doing?
Champion. Yes, not very well, thank you, Gav. Yes.
That's never going to get any less cringeworthy when I say it, but I still like doing it. Okay, so we're here today to talk about Sunderland's game at the weekend with Doncaster Rovers, of course, a team who many have probably been surprised by this season, playing good football, winning lots of games, scoring good goals, playing nice stuff with a manager that the fans like. Sounds like the complete opposite to Sunderland, doesn't it, Jimmy?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a bit of a coup for them, really, to get Darren Moore, especially when he came in, considering things had really kind of gone tits up for them. So they lost so many of their good players after those playoffs. To get him in off the back of 2 good years at West Brom. Yeah, them looking at them with envy. Same with Plymouth. I don't know if any of you guys watched it on Monday night against Portsmouth, but young manager, looked like they had a plan when they got the ball, playing it around, lots of movement in their front three. There's a lot of teams that are going in one direction and we're obviously not.
Yeah. Martin, I mean, Sunderland, obviously at the weekend, were shocking, weren't they? Are you worried? Are you worried about Doncaster at all?
I think we'd be very lucky to get anything out of the game at all, to be honest. I'd settle for a point right now in the context of the season. And like, my view at the minute is we're treading water at the minute, and we just have to pick up points until the next thing happens, i.e. the takeover happens, and I'm sure we'll come on to that. But at the minute, we just have to scrap away and get wherever we can. But if we got 2 points out of the next 2 games, I'd be quite content, which is a terrible thing to say as a Sunderland fan when the next 2 games are Doncaster away and Fleetwood away, and not Manchester United and Liverpool.
Well, I was just about to touch on that actually, Jimmy, because we've got Doncaster and we've got Fleetwood on the Friday night. And then the 2 games after that, I think, are Burton and someone else. Shit, I've totally forgot. I don't know if anyone remember. But anyway, we're playing 2 crap teams after that, and it was making me wonder about it, and I'm thinking, well, if you were going to sack Phil Parkinson, you would probably have done it now, wouldn't you? Everybody who wants rid of him is probably content knowing that he's not going to hang on to that job should the takeover go through. And we're being told it could be a matter of weeks, right? So what is it, a case of we just have to grin and bear it the next couple of games? I mean, it's going to be a struggle, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I think the one thing we have to remember is, as crap as the weekend was, and as crap as things have been, last year was way worse. Like, I remember being stood in that stand in Gillingham and just thinking, there's no way that guy isn't sacked in the next 48 hours. I remember coming out of the stadium on Boxing Day and thinking, well, this guy's gone. He's gone. It's done. It's over. I remember sort of that feeling that I used to have in the 19-point season, in the 15-point season, where it's like, I don't know where our next points are coming from. And that was less than a year ago. So I think the thing is, we've got to remember is, 1, it's an empty stadium, so the pressure is less. And 2, that Parkinson's come back from the dead before. So as naff as it is, as much as people are fed up with him, as much as watching the games on stream sucks, every game in League One, even with this manager, I think we've got a chance in. So that is something we've got to cling to. Although ideally we'd be seeing a better product, we'd be seeing better from our players. We're still in a league where, because of the quality of our squad, we're going to be competitive week in and week out. And for better or worse, we've got a manager who seems to be quite good at ignoring the noise from the outside. So I don't think that the sort of social media meltdown, the sense of sort of anger that's coming out of the club, that's being directed towards the club on social media, is going to affect the players too much. And I think if you're looking for positives, that is potentially one.
How are you feeling about the chances of the team on Saturday then, with that in mind?
I don't know. I mean, I could see us nicking a point. It's so hard to say because, like you said, Doncaster are a good team, but is it going to be a more open game? Are our defence going to get back to what they were? A lot depends on who's fit, because I kind of think if Willis can start looking like Jordan Willis again, then maybe we've got a chance of nicking a draw. Maybe we've got a chance of nicking a 1-0, sneaking out a 2-1 like we did there last year.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really hard to say. It's really hard to say.
Well, I think that's a feeling shared by the fan base. So I threw it out on Twitter just earlier there and asked everybody, how are you feeling about this game and Sunderland's chances of winning? And just to scroll through a few of them, we've got Cameron Johnson who says, I don't know how anyone can look forward to Sunderland games anymore. The way we're playing and the way this manager's got us set up each week's just painful come 3 o'clock. I don't look forward to games, and the we should win this just doesn't seem plausible anymore. Aislinn says, I'm at the point where a competitive draw would be a positive result. Icing on the cake would be to see a youngster or two get some game time. Wishful thinking with Parkinson at the helm. Probably just going to be the usual drab, dull, lifeless tripe we get all the time. Hannah pretty much shares those feelings. She's saying, I'm getting the same feeling I had when Moyes was in charge. Just can't get geared up for the match. I'm just filled with dread. It's like, oh great, how can we embarrass ourselves today? What can we do to out-Sunderland ourselves? Why don't we utilise our players? Yeah, I mean, I'm scrolling through these replies and everyone's pretty much on the same page. Joe saying he feels pessimistic. Ian Brown is a little bit more positive. He's saying if we play the right players in the right positions, then we'll win. If Parkinson persists with shoehorning people into his inability to change and be flexible, we'll lose our 4th in the row. Martin, I guess that's a point we can move on to. Parky's insistence of sticking with players, and we touched on this on Sunday when we did the recap show. It's pretty much becoming his undoing for me. The fact that he's just so inflexible tactically that players are having to be shoehorned into positions just to fit his system. Is there any chance that he changes this at the weekend to try and save his job, do you think?
I don't think there is. And I find it quite strange and curious, really, because Parkinson, before he came to Sunderland, never had a reputation of being a 3-at-the-back manager. And he's stumbled upon this system with that terrible run that Jimmy was talking about, the Gillingham away Bolton game. I think it was after that, or it might have been the Bolton game where he went to...
We battered somebody, didn't we? We battered somebody playing 3-at-the-back. And Willis was overlapping down the right.
It was Wickham, yeah, because I was over for Christmas and at that game. Willis was doing a great job, and it was kind of like Parkinson watched Sheffield United the night before and thought, oh shit, that's a good idea, let's try that. And it kind of worked. And he's chucked everything. He's chucked every chip he's got onto 5-at-the-back, which is fine if you've got the players to play it. The really contradictory thing is that his football system all throughout his career has been based on crosses. Get wide, get crosses into the box, and with a 5, you've only got one player going down the wing. Whereas if you've got the 4-at-the-back, you've got the 2. And I think that really shows in our style of play, because you kind of have people like Denver Hume and 09 or Gooch or whoever he's designated as a wing back, kind of on the own, and having a lot of pressure on them to create those crossing opportunities. And he's as we saw on Saturday, he's putting Luke 09 at the back there for, and you were going into the MK Dons game on Saturday, and you kind of go, you know what, we haven't got Flanagan and McLaughlin because they're on international duty. You haven't got RB and Feeney and all of these other centre halves because they're injured. It's a perfect game to go forward at the back and try something different. You're playing against a team who hadn't won an away game for 12 months, and you just go and do it. And he tried something different with Grigg up front, and that would be the only thing I would kind of say to his credit. He's tried to figure out that front 2 or 3 to get a more optimal partnership or threesome up there. But that 5-at-the-back with Ledbetter sitting deep as well, it's going to be 6 at the back sometimes, and it's just overkill. And to me, he's got to try something different.
I did notice a few people point out the Grigg thing and that he was trying something different, but to me it felt as though, he's played Graham up there, he's played O'Brien up there. Is it not just a case, Jimmy, that he was just throwing some mud at the wall and hoping it stuck?
I think it might have been a game-specific thing, because I was thinking about this. I was looking at Twitter the other day, and a lot of people have sort of been raving about the fact that the MK Dons goalkeeper kept on moving out to right centre-back. So I wonder if he looked at that and thought, I want more pace, I want someone who can press, I want to stop MK Dons from playing out from the back, I want them to feel uncomfortable. And I wonder if it was a tactical one-off, because... yeah, I was on this podcast last week, and I never thought in a million years Grigg would play. Like, that was the last thing on my mind. I was like, well, it's going to be Maguire or Embleton. He might throw someone new in there. He's going to look for more creative players. My hunch is that he kind of thought, right, MK Dons, good passing team, 60% possession. We're going to press. First league game in 2 weeks. We're going to get after them. So I think it was a game-specific thing. I think it was him thinking, if ever there was a game for Will Grigg, this is it. And I think Will Grigg repaid him by missing 2 massive chances, and that'll be Grigg gone. I think But Martin's right. The bigger point is that he's played for it at the back for too long. He's tried to shoehorn too many players into positions they're not used to, and he should have changed it. But now Flanagan's back, now McLaughlin's back. The need for him to change it is less so. He can look at it and be like, well, we were quite good when these two were playing at centre back. We'll go back to what we know. We'll trust ourselves. We'll put the MK Dons game down to Will Grigg missing from 5 yards, and we'll carry on. So I fully expect him to ignore the larger problems with his system and just carry on as we've been.
I think you can argue a case for it though, can't you? Being in an away game where you are going to be under pressure. And I think that's the frustrating thing. I've got no problem with the 3 at the back system. I've been quite supportive of it because it's to be fair to him, it's the first time for a while you can see that we've got a system that the players are drilled in, and you can see what we're trying. Now we might not agree with the attractiveness of it. We might not agree with the effectiveness of it, but at least we can kind of see there's a tactical shape and system there. So I think that's a positive. The negative out of that is that he's so rigid in that he can't change it. And whether the players can change it or not, another matter. But the players who come into those roles, like Gooch has, like 09 has, you can see they know what they should be doing. Whether they've actually got the technical ability to do it to the right level or not is another matter altogether, isn't it? But you can see that they understand the system. And I think going into the Doncaster game on Saturday, I've got no issue with the 5 at the back because I think it will be a tough game where we're probably looking to pick up the scraps and get a goal. That's unfortunately the reality of the situation that we're in. It's more the games like the game on Saturday and like the previous home games that we've dropped points in, where we're so rigid in that 5 that we haven't got a plan B. I know it's cliched, but it's that other option, isn't it, that we just don't have.
Yeah, this takeover thing hanging over us at the minute, Jimmy. Obviously, I touched on it before. Parkinson probably knows he's a goner eventually. I mean, it's very highly likely that with a sporting director coming in and a new owner, that they will go a different route at some point. And it's kind of like, well, when do I go? With that hanging over, not just Parkinson, but the players, just do you foresee that having any sort of impact? Because if I was a player in that dressing room, and all this was going on, it would be a distraction, surely, because you're kind of thinking, well, this manager hasn't got long left. How much can I buy into what he's trying to get us to do? And before I let you speak there, I just want to point out something which I noticed today. I was listening back to the BBC Newcastle podcast after the game on Saturday. Gary Bennett talked about Lyndon Gooch's position on the pitch and sort of alluded to the fact he felt that Gooch kind of neglected his responsibility in terms of being a wing-back. He kind of talked more about how Gooch had sat higher, and that meant because he refused to maybe do the traditional job of a wing-back, that Willis was getting pulled across and it was sort of causing problems at the back. And it did make us wonder, like, have some of these players stopped playing for him, do you think?
It's really hard to say because I was on here last week and I was saying how I'd been really disappointed with the reaction to the Portsmouth game, because that was our first real setback of the season. Okay, we had the 1-1 draw with Bristol Rovers, but that was our first loss. Like, we got badly outplayed in that game. And I was hoping in the Rochdale game, in the Gillingham game, what you'd see is a focused set of players. And it was really one of the things I was really trying to look out for on Saturday. And for the most part, I thought the effort was there. I thought most of our failings were more of a tactical perspective. It's like Martin touched on earlier. It was just death by crosses. It was the lack of variety. It was the lack of strategy to break a team down. It was our inability to stop MK Dons breaking on us in those first 50 minutes. A lot of our failings, I thought, more than anything, were tactical, because something's not felt right watching Sunderland for the last 2 to 3 weeks. So it was something I was definitely trying to hone in on Saturday. And I didn't see it so much. I did think that there were 11 committed players out there, whether they'd got the right instructions or been set up in the right way to win. Well, obviously they hadn't. But I don't know. I'm sure there's certain players that would be happy to see the back of him. But I think it's a bit early to suggest that they've kind of given up on him or that they've sort of gone that way.
I would say with the Gooch observation, I think that's probably more likely a byproduct of Willis not being able to move than Gooch neglecting any sort of tactical responsibilities. Because usually in that system, Willis is kind of underlapping and getting out into that final third on the right-hand side, isn't he? He's knacked. You can tell he's not fit in the slightest. And he couldn't do that.
It'll be interesting to see if he actually plays on Saturday.
Well, I suspect he will, because as long as he can stand up, Parkinson will play him.
what I think we'll do now is we'll go on to my conversation with Paul Goodwin of the Doncaster Free Press. He's a Sunderland fan who works for the local paper down there, and I spent a little bit of time chatting to him ahead of the game just to get the Doncaster perspective on the match, which of course we can't provide, but he can. Paul, how are you today, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Being a Sunderland fan, it's been a bit of a grim week or so, hasn't it, in that respect? This is obviously like a game I look forward to. It's the first game I look for on the fixture list, but it's come round again, and I'm kind of really apprehensive and almost dreading it from a Sunderland perspective, to be honest. But we'll come on to that, I'm sure.
Yeah. I was going to ask you actually who you're going to be supporting on Saturday, because you're torn between two clubs.
Strictly professional. I think everybody in Doncaster knows that I'm a Sunderland lad, a Sunderland fan, red and white through and through. But obviously, I've become very close to Doncaster. I've covered them for about 14 years now. They're my second team, if you like. So I can't lose on Saturday, put it that way.
Well, they're playing red and white.
That's it, yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it would have been. I would say, for instance, you were covering Dalton or something. I think I'd struggle to support any team who are playing black and white. So if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you're a Sunderland fan. You say you've been down there 14 years.
14 years now, yeah.
Yeah. So how did that come about?
Ex-Monk Weymouth School, went on to City of Sunderland College, got my qualifications, went to Durham University. I was a decent cricketer back in the day. I played for Sunderland in the North East Premier League. Had a bit of success there, but I wasn't good enough to be professional. So the next best thing for me was to write about sport. And eventually I got my foot in the door, moved down to here. It's JPI Limited, so I'm working for the Sheffield Star, the Doncaster Free Press, and believe it or not now as well, also helping out on the North East titles, the Sunderland Echo, Shields Gazette. So eventually, maybe I might move back up to the North East. We'll see how it goes.
Well, I didn't realise that. I suppose it's all changed, hasn't it?
It's all changed, like every industry.
There's not as many people covering Sunderland as there used to be.
Yeah. But I know Phil Smith as well. Funnily enough, Phil Smith at the Echo, he used to be a little lad at Sunderland Cricket Club. He plays there still now. So there must be something about Ashbrook. I don't know what it is, but a breeding ground for sports journalists.
So, I mean, like you say, you're a Sunderland fan. What's your thoughts on how things are going at the minute? Are you keeping up with, I presume you are, you're keeping up with how things are going?
Yeah, I listen to the lads on Radio Newcastle, actually. I keep in the know through that show. I quite enjoy that. And of course, the content that you guys churn out day in and day out. I think if you look at the numbers, it's not been a bad start of the season, has it, in all fairness? But the last week or so, it's just absolutely, it's diabolical. And the enthusiasm that I had at the start of the season, I actually tipped Sunderland to go up this season, but the enthusiasm has just sort of drained out of me these last few days. And I'm looking at that team. I said on Twitter the other night, what are the redeeming qualities of this team at present? There's no pace, there's no youth. And if we're not going to be hard to beat and sort of grind teams down, which I thought we were, if we're not going to do that, what exactly is the plan?
Conversely, though, Doncaster did more so for the neutrals, sort of started well, didn't they?
Yeah, well, this is it. I've been thinking about it quite a lot, about the build-up to this game and the two teams, and it's a really interesting contrast, because Doncaster are kind of the other side of the coin, if you like, and they've got a team who are fun to watch. They're actually a really fun team to watch, and I hope the supporters down here appreciate that. Like, sometimes they're inconsistent, they're a young team, so it doesn't always go to plan, but they're a fun team to watch. They've got old-fashioned wingers who are quick. James Coppinger still does his business, sometimes from the bench.
He was at Newcastle years ago, but he seems to have been at Doncaster forever, doesn't he?
Top lad, top player. They've got Ben Whiteman, who's a Rolls-Royce of a player, and they try and play good football. Like I say, consistency is the issue. They can't produce that sort of every game. And these players are at League One for a reason. They're at League One level for a reason. But like I say, that they play good football. They go out there, they give their all. They've got an identity under Darren Moore, and it's a bit of a stark contrast with what's going on up at Sunderland, where you've got the quality, but on paper you've got quality, but where's it going? I don't know. I don't know how you feel about things, but it just seems to be drifting again, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like I say, it's probably a good time for Doncaster to be playing Sunderland. I'm not looking forward to this week, to be honest. We've got two hard games.
Yeah.
I was looking also at Doncaster's recent form. First league game in almost 3 weeks, I think, because of the break, and then cup games and so on. Last time out, drew 2-2 away at Wimbledon in the league. but before that beat Lincoln 1-0, who were up there. Though it did lose to Plymouth, who are surprising a few people. I mean, what do you make of the season so far? It seems to, like I say, entertaining team, but in those first 5 or 6 games, they were flying. So have they tailed off a little bit? Would you say?
No, it's quite a peculiar record. They've beaten some really big names. They've beaten Ipswich, Lincoln, Portsmouth, and Charlton. But on the other hand, they've lost to Wigan, Crewe, and Plymouth. And between us, the press team, the players are talking about it themselves. Why is this happening? We've tried to get to the bottom of it, and it looks like they're struggling against teams who go out to stop them rather than play their own game. Where you get the bigger teams who are coming up against them and playing their own game and opening up, that's leaving spaces for Doncaster to attack, catch them on the break, get their game going. So they've had a bit of joy against the big teams, whereas Wigan, for instance, and Plymouth sort of came up with a plan to try and stop Doncaster, get bodies behind the ball, and that's where they came unstuck. And I think it's probably a problem that Doncaster and Sunderland have had this season. When you get that 10 men behind the ball, camping on the edge of the box, in the final third, they have had a few issues. Doncaster's main threat is the quick breaks. If they're allowed to play through teams, if they get space, if Ben Whiteman's given license, if he's given the space to dictate, he'll dominate a game at this level. So that's what we think it is. So that it's interesting as to whether Sunderland. You'd think Sunderland will come here and they'll have a go. You'd like to think that, wouldn't you? You wouldn't like to think that Sunderland would come here and stick 10 men behind the ball. So whether that game plan will work against this Doncaster team, because it might allow Donny the space to play their own game. So it's an interesting one, it's an interesting matchup. And it's, like I say, well, does Phil Parkinson this week, from a Sunderland perspective, he might rip it up and just start again, but he seems determined.
I've sort of been pondering on this because we spoke at the weekend on the podcast about, I did. I said I think he knows his time's up. So will he throw everything at it, or will it be a case of more of the same? If I'm honest, I don't really think it's in him to do that. I think it'll just be more of the same from Sunderland.
I think a lot of these managers are kind of stuck in their ways, aren't they? They'll stick by their formation in the hope that it'll come together.
You've got to know Darren Moore a bit, obviously, recently. Do you think he'll be up for it? I presume he's the type of manager who... Is he a good motivator of players, would you say? Because, like you say, they've beat some big teams.
He's just a really sound, really good guy. Obviously, I haven't seen him behind closed doors, and he won't suffer fools gladly, I'm sure, but he's like a gentle giant. He's respected by the players, the fans. He's an ex-Doncaster player, of course, and everybody just really respects the guy. He's sort of he's a big fella. He's imposing, and he's had a really good impact at Doncaster. It's not the easiest place. He hasn't got a massive budget. He hasn't got the resources to go out and spend a lot of money. But the road they've gone down is bringing in these loan players from the Premier League, tapping into the loan market. They've actually got 6 players on loan from Premier League clubs. And it's a way of bringing in a quality of player that they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford. And some of those players that have made a huge impact, and going back to what I said at the start, they're also exciting players to watch. I'll pick out one now for you if you like. Josh Sims, who's on loan from Southampton. He's come in and he just immediately hit the ground running, assists, goals, plays on the wing, quick, good footwork, clever player in the final third. And yeah, they've put together a competitive team, Donny, despite the problems over the summer, despite the problems of COVID. Sadly, they were laying staff off over the summer, but they've managed to put a good competitive team together, and I'd like to think that they'll sneak in the playoffs again this season.
If you could pick out, let's say, 2 players from that Doncaster squad and put them into Sunderland's team, because I don't know, to be honest, and a lot of people will be like me, I don't know a lot about Doncaster. I know of Ben Whiteman, he's one player who always gets mentioned, but let's say you could pick 2 players out of that squad and plop them into Sunderland's team, and they'd walk into it and improve it straight away.
Yeah, Ben Whiteman immediately, like I say, just a class act. He sticks out like a sore thumb at times at this level, sits in front of the back 4, just gets on the ball, makes things tick. His forward passing is fantastic, really. His passing's got better and better and better. Long range passing, short range passing, and Doncaster's whole game plan really is playing through the thirds, playing through Ben Whiteman, And of course, he sits deep, but he pops up on the edge of the box as well. So he latches onto things, and he scored an absolutely stunning goal the other week. I don't know if you saw that one, a nice team build up on the edge of the box, and he's volleyed it home from 20 yards, like left-footed, different class. So I've heard people say, I heard somebody say on the phone in last night, Sunderland needs somebody in that middle of the park to really get a grip of it, to control the tempo, the flow of the game. Ben Whiteman will do that for you, no problem. And I think he'll be playing in the Championship next season, regardless of where Doncaster are at. And the other one, I think it'll be a toss-up between Josh Sims, who I've mentioned. He's played in the Premier League for Southampton.
Yeah.
He's got a pedigree behind him. He's come in and really looked the part. And Tom Anderson, centre-back, old school. I think we're all right for Sunderland are all right for centre-backs, though. So,
I thought that for a little while there, but then he's playing Luke O'Nien there, and everyone's getting injured. So
that's the one I do not understand from the weekend. Why on earth are we playing Luke O'Nien at centre-back?
Well, let's just see if it carries on, because I think that's the one. That was the big head scratcher from the weekend, and obviously, if you're Darren Moore, that's what you got to be looking at. Like, they're playing a centre midfield player who usually plays right wing back at left centre half. We need to target him. Okay, so just looking ahead of the game then, is there any team news out yet for Doncaster? Are they going to be full strength, or are they missing a few decent players?
They're missing a couple of loan lads. They've missed a couple of loan lads, strikers, for a few weeks now, which is a shame. So they're relying very heavily on Fajiri Okunabiri to lead the line.
I'm glad you got that right, by the way, so I've got it written down. I would never have got his name first time. I'm glad you said it.
He's the sort of... he holds the ball up well. He gives a bit of a physical presence up there. He's not a kind of poacher as such, but he leads the line. Interesting one for you here, though. Reece James has actually been playing in midfield last few games.
Whereabout? In the centre?
Yeah, as part of a midfield three. He's been the holding midfielder a little bit, and he's also been given license to go forward a little bit more. They've actually got three. They've got a small squad, Donny, but they've actually got three left backs. So as a way of getting them all in, Reece James has slotted into midfield to help the team out, and he's grown into the role. He's done quite well, actually, and he's been a good signing for Donny. He's a really steady Eddie at this level, and he's one that I look at and think, from Sunderland's perspective, you could have done a lot worse. I know they've struggled down that left side a bit, relying on Denver Hume. So
yeah, he was a funny one, Reece James. He played for us obviously at a time when we also had Brian Oviedo, and he was like I would say he wasn't a great offensive player, which I think you need to be sometimes. But I'm not surprised to hear that he's went into midfield, because he was all right on the ball, defensively sound, and if he's got players around him with experience like Whiteman and so on. Talking through games, and I was going to ask a little bit about him actually, but I'm glad to hear he's doing all right.
Yeah, definitely. There's a nice balance to this Donny team. They've got another loan lad, Matt Smith from Man City, who's a bit of a ratter, if you like. He gets around the park and gets after people, and he sort of complements the Ben Whitemans and Reece James, who are good on the ball. In terms of team news, big one possibly this weekend is John Taylor. I'm not entirely sure whether he's fully fit. He's the ex-Rotherham winger, and he's very quick.
I think he was linked with us at one point in the last year or so. Yeah,
he's a quick player, and he's an outlet. He gives this team an outlet. His pace lets them get up the pitch very quickly, and I think Doncaster are a stronger team when he's in it. So that's one to keep an eye on, whether he's fit and raring to go. But I think like you said, they've had a weekend off, Donny. They weren't playing at the weekend due to international call-ups, so they're coming into this game. They should be fresh, no excuses.
Can I eke a prediction out of you? Score prediction as a man who has to sit on the fence?
You've beat me to it. I knew you'd ask me for a prediction, and I am going to sit on the fence. But like I said earlier, it'll just be interesting to see how both teams go about this. I think it'll be a close game. I think there's been close games in recent seasons. But Sunderland have got form, haven't they, in this fixture? That, like, I remember last season at the Keepmoat, I was similarly down on Sunderland's fortunes, and I was going round telling everyone round here, "Oh, Donny, you're in with a great chance. You'll do us this weekend." And Sunderland turned up, and that was the game that got us going, if you remember. At Donny, that they really put on a show. They were organised, they were energetic. So you just don't know, do you? You just don't know what Sunderland are going to turn up. And in a similar vein, you don't know what this Doncaster team can do, as the results have shown. if Doncaster turn up and bring the A game, then I do fear for Sunderland. If Sunderland turn up and are resilient and are strong and are defensively strong, they can possibly do a job on Donny and nick something maybe from a set piece, something like that. So I think it'll be tight, but I'm going to sit on the fence completely and go for a ones each draw.
Yeah, I think you're probably safe in doing that, to be honest. So, Paul, thanks very much for joining us. Where can people find your work and your social media and stuff?
Yeah, at Paul Goodwin, JPI, and like I say, I'm doing a bit of Sunderland Echo stuff as well now, but mainly covering sport in South Yorkshire at the moment, so Doncaster Free Press, Sheffield Star, and open to further opportunities. I'm doing a bit of commentary on iFollow as well, but I've actually backed down for this weekend's game because I don't think the Doncaster fans want to hear a Mackem voice this weekend, so... But no, I enjoy your work as well, obviously, with the ROKER Report, lads. So it's nice to get invited and come on and hear the Sunderland accent and get involved.
Well, I'm sure you'll be back on in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thanks to Paul for that conversation. Of course, he's, like I said, a Sunderland fan, so who knows what's going to happen, Paul. But yeah, if it's a draw, it might be a good result for you, I suppose. Doncaster then, Jimmy, they sit 10th in the table after 10 games. Won 5, they've drawn 2, they've lost 3. They have 17 points from a possible 30. Like I said at the top of the show, probably overperforming a little bit compared to what people thought. But I certainly wouldn't be underestimating them because they've beat some very, very good teams this season. Like we said, we were just talking off air there a little bit about Ben Whiteman, and Paul was keen to point him out. He's somebody who I'm really afraid of, to be honest. And people might think that sounds a bit daft. We're playing a League One team. He's a League One player. But I'm just concerned about our midfield and how easily they've become overrun in recent weeks. I mean, what do you think of him and the sort of impact he can have on the game?
Yeah, no, he's a great midfield all-rounder, especially considering his age. I think he was somebody that a lot of people expected to be playing his football in the Championship this season. He's been their captain for a little while. He's seen as a leader. And he's one of the better passers in the league. He's a guy who links everything together for them. It'll be interesting to see because Parkinson keeps on talking about pressing, because Frankie Francis and Danny Collins keep on talking about pressing. Who does play in the sort of areas he's going to be wanting to play in this week? Does Power get another chance? Is Gooch going to be the guy who's asked to close him down? It's going to be very interesting to see what we do to try and stop him because, yeah, he's a guy with a big reputation as one of the better all-round footballers in the division.
Martin, it's a funny little matchup, to be honest, because Sunderland are obviously very rigid, play to a system. And like we've said countless times, the players who play in each position, it could be like for like, they're all asked to do the same job, whatever position they're playing on the pitch. Whereas Doncaster, very free-flowing, they like to move the ball quickly, they've got pace and attack. Is that a bad thing for us that we're playing a team like that who like to play on the counter? Because to be honest, I can't work it out. I don't know whether that's a bad matchup or not.
I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup, isn't it? I think it kind of depends who gets control of that game early. And the positive thing with our system that we've got and have been well drilled in, as we were saying earlier, is that we are quite structured and we are everyone knows the jobs, and we have got players who can close people down. By the sounds of it, you'd probably see maybe Dobson comes into the side, which would be certainly not my choice, but you can kind of see Parkinson making a case in his own head for somebody like him coming in. And we have got players who can close down and press very well off the ball. I think it's the on the ball stuff that we've struggled with this season. So look, it'll be a really interesting one. I think it's again a cliche, but whoever gets that first goal, or gets that whoever gets that first red card or first penalty, will probably emerge victorious.
Maybe this is my heart rule in my head, but one thing I sort of wanted to mention earlier is Jack Ross always used to talk about how he likes playing the bigger teams, how he liked playing Barnsley back in the day, your Peterboroughs, because they'd throw players forwards, they'd throw 5 or 6 players forwards, and that would give our better players a chance to play one-on-one, a chance to play in space. He always used to say if the game was open, that favoured us. And I don't know how true that was then or how true it still is, but I think this might be a good barometer for that. If Doncaster are as attacking as they have been, whether there are going to be spaces for Lyndon Gooch maybe to have a bounce back game, whether Maguire can come in and sort of win us the game in ways that he has in the past. Maybe that's my heart rule in my head, but that's one way you can kind of make a case for Sunderland. If it's open, if they're attacking, if they're going to be expansive, can Gooch have a big game? Can someone like that go and win us a game of football?
See, I think they're the teams that we've struggled against, Jimmy. I think the teams who sit back and allow us to control the game and don't really try to come at us will grind them down. I think it's the teams like we saw on Saturday where MK Dons came and were a bit adventurous and they tried to play and push up. And yeah, granted, both the goals came from set pieces, but I think they're the teams. Portsmouth did it, and even at that,
Rochdale as well.
Well, Rochdale and that Peterborough game at the start of the season. I still maintain that was one of those games that would have gone either way. You could play that 10 times and got 5 wins and 5 defeats. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think that might be a new thing this season because he's kind of playing Ledbetter as the single pivot.
Yeah.
I think if teams run at us, there's space there for them. Like, it was amazing against MK Dons how many times you're like, oh, thank God for Ledbetter there. Oh, thank God for right there. Like, I remember we went in 1-1 at half time. I remember thinking, if it weren't for those two, we'd be 2-3-1 down. So maybe that's a thing that he's tried to be more attacking this season in his Phil Parkinson way. And that does leave us more open, to runners from midfield. Like, was it Williams? I don't know if I can get his name wrong, but the amount of times he'd run past Power, and then before you knew it, we were 3-on-3. I do wonder whether that's a good point, Martin, that this season, with Parkinson's new 3-5-2 system, whether if teams are a bit braver, if they can move the ball a bit quicker, whether we are vulnerable that way.
That's the interesting thing as well, isn't it? Because you look at what has changed from last season when we had that 3 at the back that was working well to this season.
Yeah.
And the addition or the change or the main change has been Ledbetter in that back half of the field, in our defensive half of the field. The change has been Ledbetter, and what we've done, we've brought him into the side to sit in front of a back 3. So essentially, we've got those 4 players in central defensive positions. Whereas really, to my mind, if you're playing somebody that deep in midfield, you only need 2 centre-halves. Because otherwise you create a gap in front of Ledbetter where people have got 10 yards to run at them. And, that's why you kind of look at the players that we've got. We go back to the conversation earlier in terms of that plan B. And, the only player that 5 at the back really suits is Denver Hume. You look in the squad, that's the only player it really suits. And it doesn't suit the likes of Jack Diamond. It doesn't suit the likes of Dan Neil necessarily either. So you've got these young players who could come in to add something, but the system isn't set up to allow them to do it. So, you've got all of these issues. I just think by playing Ledbetter there, you're really you're inviting the opponents to just come 10, 15 yards further forward than they probably would do otherwise.
If you're Darren Moore, then what do you do to try and counteract whatever Sunderland have got and beat us? Because I often think this. I try to place myself in the opposition manager's shoes and think, what would I do against this team, knowing exactly how we play? Because this was a point Sam made on Sunday. If you're the manager of the opposition team, we must be so easy to prepare against because you know exactly how we're going to play. Put yourself in his shoes, Jimmy. What would you do?
I think the main thing I'd be emphasising is be brave. Be brave. If you can, like we just said, if you can get beyond the first line of our press, and Maguire's going to play, who's going to look to be lazy off the ball at times. To be fair, this season he's done a better job of closing people down. Like you think of Oxford game, how up for it he was then. But I'd be thinking, where's the dope? Who's switched off? And I'd be saying, let's be brave. Let's try and play out from the back. Let's try and get them turned. Because if we get past that first line of the press, they've got Bailey Wright, who's a good defender but slow. They've got Grant Ledbetter, who's smart but slow. We can get at them. We can run at them. If we can get Josh Sims 1-on-1, if we can get our forward line 1-on-1 against their back 3, there's some joy for us here. So if I was him, I'd be saying, let's be brave. Let's look to play out of our third, and let's look to get them turning. Let's look to get them going back towards their own goal where they don't like going.
Anything to add there, Martin?
Oh, just two very simple things. Match the work rate, because I think, as Jimmy touched upon before, I think the effort that the players are putting in, I wouldn't necessarily question that. I think the players are still putting the shift in. Match the work rate and stop the crosses, and if you can do that, we are very easy to play against.
I think one thing we've got to consider probably for this game is there's probably going to be a volume of players there who weren't available for the MK Dons game that are going to be now available for this one. Who do you think comes into the team, Jimmy? Because obviously we saw Remy Matthews play the last game. We saw Embleton didn't even feature in the squad when everybody expected him to maybe play a part. Obviously there's the Grigg situation up front where obviously coming out of the game, everybody sort of blaming Greg for missing the chance that he did. Will Parkinson pull the trigger there? I mean, there's a lot of decisions to be made on the team, isn't there?
Yeah, no, I'm still wiping the egg off my face from guaranteeing Elliot Embleton a place in the squad last week. I thought it was a cert. I was like, well, yeah, how do you ignore this guy? Someone did point out to me on Twitter that this is a guy who's had a lot of injury problems. Maybe Parkinson's easing his way in. I don't know if that's wishful thinking. I don't know if that's giving Parkinson more credit than he deserves. But I've written down 3 changes. I mean, Martin, I think, is going to disagree, having already said that Willis could be running around on one leg and he'd still get into the team. But I've said Willis out, Power out, Grigg out, Flanagan, McLaughlin and Maguire in. So my thinking is that Flanagan and McLaughlin are going to take the left centre-back and right centre-back spot. O'Nien moves back over to right wing-back. Gooch goes back over onto the left and takes Power's place in the team. And Maguire plays off Wyke in place of Grigg. That would be what I'd expect, but who knows?
What about you, Martin?
Yeah, I think Willis will play if he's moving and breathing. Flanagan will probably come back into the side. I think didn't McLaughlin go off injured for Northern Ireland? I'm not sure what's wrong with him. I haven't heard anything.
Oh yeah,
about that.
I did see that. I forgot about that.
I'm not sure if it was serious. I've not seen anything. Not seen anything in the press since, but you never know. Yeah. I suppose by the time this drops, that we might have heard from Phil Parkinson and maybe give an update on that. But I don't think I've seen anything.
Yeah, and I think I agree with Jimmy. O'Nien will go back to right wing back if that's the case. I would expect Birch to come back and goal if his ankle's recovered from wherever it was that kept him out on Saturday. And then you're kind of looking. You guarantee Ledbetter a place in the side. You guarantee Charlie Wyke a place in the side. And after that, I think Parkinson's got a load of cards he'll chuck up in the air at the minute and see what lands, because I think he's just trying to find something after that setup. I think he's trying to find whatever works in between, and he's going to keep rotating people until he hits on something. I would expect Maguire to come back into the side because he looked good when he came on against MK Dons. Oh, it's all relative anyway, but he looked better than the other players. I'd love to see Embleton get a chance. I don't think he will. As I say, I wouldn't be surprised if he made a case for Dobson to come back into the side to add a bit of graft and some legs. I wouldn't pick him, but who knows?
The mention of that name just depresses me. I don't want him anywhere in the other team.
Sorry, Gav.
The other thing I think it's maybe worth adding as well is just sort of reading between the tea leaves in his post-match interview. I thought he sounded furious with Grigg. That was my main takeaway from his interview with Oscar straight after. He was like, we can't keep missing these chances. Our expected goals has been this, and this. 5 yards out. I think he repeated 5 yards out. I think he must add that in his nightmares. He's just like 5 yards out. He's 5 yards out. He has to take these chances. So I think Grigg's gonna get the axe. I think that was one miss too many.
It's one of those things, isn't it, Jimmy? You kind of go, if he drops him, then Grigg will not start another game for Sunderland under Parkinson, because that'll be him done. Or do you give him another go and go, you know what? That's going to be hanging over you all week. Get back out and show me what you can do, because I still I think I posted on Twitter immediately after Grigg missed that chance. That's him done at Sunderland. He's never going to score for us. But in the cold light of day, he's the one player in the squad who can score goals. And there's still a part of me that thinks the primary thing that any manager's got to be concerned with at Sunderland with that squad is getting him scoring, because that's the best chance we've got of going up. And really, the system should all be based around getting him into positions where he can put the ball away, because if he got onto a run, which seems unlikely after 2 years of bloody trying, man, but if he got onto a run to score some goals, he could be crucial, but he'll be dropped.
Yeah, I suspect so. Okay, then let's quickly go around the table before we finish up with a score prediction from both of you and maybe some match predictions, and try and work out what you think might happen. When I spoke, obviously, to Paul, he said 1-1. He was sitting on the fence. I think I'm along those lines. I fancy us to score, but I also don't fancy us to keep a clean sheet. And I'm just a little bit conscious of the fact that the last 2 losses have been so bad against 2 very bad teams. What does that do to the mentality of the group? I guess we'll find out. But for me, I'm thinking 1s each. I'm thinking we'll probably get a scrappy goal, maybe a penalty. And I fancy Doncaster to outplay us because they're a good team who are going to be confident. And they have nothing to lose playing Sunderland, do they? Jimmy, I can see you sort of swaying there. What do you think?
I wanted to say 1-1, but it feels like copying when that's the first 2 predictions. And I'm thinking, do I have enough bottle and enough confidence in Sunderland to predict a win after these last 3 weeks? I'll Yeah, I'll go 1-1 just for the reason it's hard to have confidence in Sunderland given how badly we've been playing lately. I'll go 1-1.
Yeah. Martin, are you going to give us a full house, or are you feeling different?
Before we started this conversation, I had in my head 1-1 as well, so I'm not gonna go for that. This is one of those no result in this game would surprise me. Like Doncaster winning 3-0 wouldn't surprise me, but us winning 2 or 3-0 wouldn't necessarily surprise me.
No. Do you remember playing Doncaster? I think it was at the end of I think it was on Good Friday a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah.
We'd been playing crap in the lead up and then we just battered them.
Yeah.
I think White scored.
Yeah.
They're a funny team to play against, aren't they?
And I just think this is the pivotal game for Parkinson. If we come away from there with a defeat, he is dead man walking. If we come away with a 2 or 3-0 win, he's got a stay of execution, hasn't he?
Well, I think that's the best way of putting it. A stay of execution, because it's a matter of time, isn't it? But
it is.
Yeah.
But as I said before, I think in this period of time where we don't know what's happening with a takeover with any certainty at all. It's just the most important thing is that we pick up points and just keep things moving until we know what's happening sort of longer term. Regardless of anything else, regardless of any long-term plans, the priority's still got to be going up this season if we can. So we have to just see what we can pick up. And if we get a point on paper, a point away at Doncaster is a good result, I'll go for a 2-0 win to us, just to be different. Why
not? End on a positive there. Well, thank you very much, lads, for joining us today. Obviously, everybody, you can pick us back up on probably Sunday morning after the game with the Player Ratings pod. And obviously, we'll have the recap show in the follow-up to that, probably on Monday. It's going to be a packed week next week with the game on Friday. We'll be pushing everything into a day less. But of course, as you know, at Sunderland, things are a bit mental at present, and you never know, we could have new owners by the end of all that. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that come this time next week, we'll maybe talking about a win and looking more optimistically towards Fleetwood. But until then, we will see you later.